Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. It depends on when you're watching this video, but my name is Karen Young, and I thought I would take a minute to do my presentation through an app on my iPad. This is how I present actually my Monday morning meetings to all of my online students. Rather than meeting in the gym each Monday in a physical building, we meet online. So the teachers have a homeroom session, and I actually create recordings like this that the teachers play during their homeroom sessions so that the kids can really connect with me and that I can connect with them. I take time to really look into each of the different types of cultures that we have within the school. And so sometimes I'll play snippets of videos to different characteristics that we're looking at and how we're going to be working towards our growth mindset and start building that growth mindset amongst the kids. I'll walk them around my house and show them different projects that I'm working on and showing how I utilize grit in my life. And then also they see the craziness of my dogs coming in. Sometimes my kids are on. We actually rented some chickens for a couple of weeks. And we talked about how I live in the city, so we don't have chickens, but we had the opportunity to rent some. And so then my students were able to see the chickens at my house grow up. And then we were able to relate to those kids in the school who actually live on farms. And then they were able to share kind of their experiences. Kids also will send in pictures, projects, things that they're doing throughout the year, and then I will put those right into my Monday mornings, and we'll give them shout outs. We do high point, high five, so certain students doing different projects or classes that have been completely on task throughout the week. So how does all that kind of connect to multicultural education? First of all, this quote that we had in the, it was cited by our Nieto article that we had, chapter. All kids are indeed capable of generating powerful ideas. They can rise to the occasion. It turns out that ideas are not luxuries gained at the expense of the 3 R's, but instead enhance them. And it turns out that public schools in new and different forms are the best vehicle for nourishing the extraordinary, untapped capacities of our children. The question is not, is it possible to educate all children well, but rather, do we want to do it badly enough? I can't agree with this more, and it fits exactly with my growth mindset. Something that I work so hard with our students is that we need to have this growth mindset and the power of yet. So it's not impossible. Everybody can learn it. It's just you don't know it yet. And so really working on kids rather than saying I can't do it, and working with my teachers on how they're addressing students in class or talking about families when we are having conversations when the kids aren't even around, and having that power of yet. They're not able to do it yet. We just have to find the right key to unlock their box and really get them access to all of that knowledge. And an important piece or part of that key is that multicultural education. So when we look at Banks and the article that he wrote, he identified 5 dimensions. So definitely not something that's singular in dimension, but there really is a very wide aspect to multicultural education. I put a video up on the screen. It doesn't have any language behind it or sound, so I'll kind of talk us through it as we are watching it. So there are 5 dimensions to multicultural education according to Banks. And the first he talked about was content integration. So this is really changing the curriculum to take topics and issues and focus on them from various cultural perspectives. This means that things can be integrated into the content, but that's not the only way that we do it. The second dimension is knowledge construction. So really looking at how researchers wrote textbooks, and he talks about, westward expansion. Well, westward expansion to the white European immigrants is westward expansion, but the Native Americans that were already here, It's not westward expansion to them. Or the Japanese who are coming from the east. It's not westward expansion to them. So thinking about things from different aspects and characters' perspectives in books. The third dimension, equity pedagogy. So modifying the techniques that we do. There's research that shows that African American students learn better in cooperative groups. So that should be included in the classroom, looking at how each of the different cultures that we have, what is the best way for them to learn? We then have prejudice reduction. We know that teachers and staff and others come in with bias, and so we really have to work on teaching everybody across the entire school about the different groups. Make sure it's included in the teaching material and help to reduce that prejudice. Having pen pals, guest speakers, celebrating holidays, really creating it as a school community. And again, that leads us to the fifth dimension, empowering that school culture. We have to work together to make sure that everybody is involved, and it includes everyone across the entire school so that we know that every student can learn. And not everybody learns in the same way. So that might involve finding new assessment techniques and things that are going to reach all students. We look into the research, into the data that tells us exactly how different cultures learn and those best strategies, and we integrate it into the curriculum. So it's not fixed. We integrate it into the school setting. We bring all of those pieces together so that we really, truly are meeting the needs of each individual student. And it's important to note that, all of the readings we had really told us that bringing in these different pieces of everyone's culture, or thinking about bringing in learning techniques that really meet a specific culture, does not mean we're excluding anybody. We're thinking about the big picture, and we're making sure that we're addressing each individual student's needs. Next, not prepared for academic success. This particular statement really stood out to me. This came from chapter 1 from Nyetko, and I apologize if I'm saying the last name wrong. But really, she pointed out that when we make assumptions, as students are coming into school at kindergarten and they haven't been to preschool, they don't know their letters, they don't know their numbers. We're saying they're not prepared for academic success. Their parents don't care. It's not important to them. But really, in a lot of cases, that's not true. It's really looking at the culture and what's important to the culture at that time. Just because for us, it's important that kids go to preschool, they go in already knowing how to write their name, identify their letters. That doesn't mean that every culture has that as their kind of early academic success piece. And so just because we feel it's important doesn't mean that's important to everybody, and it doesn't mean it's a negative thing either. Every culture has a different way that they look at things, and we need to be respectful of that. And so I've worked really hard, and I've done this previously, that when we're in data digs and we're talking about different students, that we really try to look at the entire student and refrain from making any remarks that could be seen as prejudice or bias, really taking things from our perspective and trying to put that away and off to the side, and looking at what are those keys that are going to unlock that learning for that child. So there's research, that we've been reading through, and really that research is tied back to our history. There's been dramatic changes throughout the world and how different cultures have come here, looking at World War II and how the Japanese were put into internment camps and how that has really affected the Japanese culture here in America. Looking at segregation and, the segregation that happened to blacks throughout history, and how that has really been, kind of, quote, the reading said, harmless to the dominant group, but what's going on to all of the other groups within it. really the best piece is what the United Nations recommends, multiculturalism, which is that peaceful coexistence. So allowing everybody to have their culture, their experience, and really making sure that we're addressing that in the way that we're teaching and educating students, allowing us to peacefully coexist by getting to truly know each other. This, though, the history has definitely impacted our laws and policies as different changes have happened in the world. We've seen the education pendulum swing from one side to the other. And so now, right now, we're really in this, after the No Child Left Behind, now Every Student Succeeds Act, making sure that every student has the proficiency on the tests, that academic data. And so we're drilling kids down to numbers right now rather than truly looking at what makes up that student. Just because they have a proficiency score of a 1309, it's not really going to tell me how that student learns. But looking at the student, seeing their cultural makeup, identifying pieces of their culture that's important for how they learn, that's going to help me figure out how to help this child be academically successful. This is just one of the schools that I was principal at, Niji Iro Elementary School, and I put the shirt on. And so this was the biggest thing for me, is that I really got the experience of being able to be integrated into a variety of cultures. So yes, we were a Japanese immersion school, but I did not just have Japanese students. It was a mix of all cultures, and we really had the opportunity to get to truly understand a variety of cultures. My favorite part, and the kids still know because I keep telling parents I'm going to come back every time, was actually the luncheons we would have. So whenever there was a potluck, and we do it at the holiday times, and we'd actually do it about 3 times a year, all of the families would bring in food from their culture and share it with the class at lunch. And the food was just amazing because you could go through and you could really see what was important in each culture, and then they would share the food with us and tell us when they traditionally ate it, what it meant. So it really allowed us to very much connect. You'll see in the picture there I'm wearing my kimono, and the girls and boys were so excited when I put that on. So that's actually during our fall festival, which is a big Japanese festival, kind of celebrating the changing of the seasons. And this fall festival, actually this is my second year being principal there, parents went back to Japan over the summer and they actually bought this for me and brought it back. And so I put it on. They came in and helped me put it all on and get it all just right. And the kids were absolutely amazed that I was just like them, understanding their culture, embracing their culture, and wanting to really be a part of who they were. And then another event that we did was actually Undokai, which was sports day. And so what I did is I really spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the different events were in different cultures that we had in our school, bringing them to our school, but really embracing the true heart of it. So for Undokai, which is sports day in Japan, I actually went to our Japanese Saturday school and watched their Undokai. So they had 4,000 people in attendance, and I was the only blonde-haired, blue-eyed person there. Everyone else was Japanese. And so I definitely stood out. A lot of my students were there because I go to school on Saturday too. And so they were super excited to see me there. But I will tell you, at first, it was a little awkward because everybody was looking at me and wondering why I was there. And I certainly didn't fit in. But it was very important to me that I learned the culture of so many of my students. And that did mean me stepping outside of my comfort zone. By doing that, I was able to find out that Undokai, which our first year we had in June, like the American Field Day, actually is meant to be held at the beginning of the school year. And it's not really to see, what kind of skills they've learned throughout the school year. It's really meant to build community amongst the kids. And then they keep coming back to sports day and talking about all the events and how much fun they had all year long. So it's a friendly competition between the white team and the red team for the Japanese, American or Japanese flag colors. And the kids then create those relationships with their grade level as they're doing competition with other grade levels and refer back to that all year long. So the next year we did Undokai, I moved it to the beginning of the school year and discussed with the students and with the families exactly what the purpose was behind Undokai and how it was so different than our American Field Day. So at the end of the year, we kept the American Field Day and said, that's really an opportunity for kids to, go out, have fun, play in water, but also to show their skills that they learned throughout the day, throughout the year by doing different events in the field day. And so I think that's where my families really appreciated that I connected with them, is that I wasn't afraid to step out of my comfort zone, because there were definitely times I felt very uncomfortable, not understanding any of the language, what was going on, but really trying to figure out exactly what I could so that I could connect with such a large part of my school. And then with my African American students, again, they're coming from Detroit out into the suburbs to come to our school. So being able to go into the city, experience where they are, going by where they live, making sure that I was having parent teas all the time to talk with parents about culturally what's happening in their houses. How did they grow up? What was their education like? To really get that grounding within all of my families so that I could build those relationships, but then also too, that was such valuable information that we'd utilize in the classroom to help those students connect and move forward with the academics. I'm going to pull up my last slide here with just my references. And I see as I uploaded it here, one piece got cut off. But I really think that, multicultural education is just so important. We have to realize that when we come into education, we certainly have our own bias that we bring to it, whether we think we do or not. We definitely do. We know that culturally responsive teaching is what is going to connect those kids to their culture, going to connect with students to be able to academically move them forward. We have to allow ourselves to step outside of that comfort zone to really know our students, their cultures, the history, and how laws have been made. Bring all of those pieces of the giant puzzle together so that as a community, we create one community. And I was always very clear about that with my students, especially at Niji Iro, saying we're not American, we're not Japanese, we're Niji Iro. Because what we do is we really combine both of those cultures so that we create one community that's Niji Iro, and that's where we respect everybody and we learn about everybody's culture, and we know that in the classroom I'm free to be whoever I want to be. Because we embrace every single aspect of a person's culture. So that's it for me. I hope you've enjoyed listening. I know it was a lot of rambling on there, but I think there's so much content in this class that we're going through that's just so important in how we connect our students to unlock their learning.